Alien abduction is a phenomenon that has divided opinions of believers and skeptics alike. Many would argue that alien abduction is a modern experience caused by cultural influence and misinterpretations of medical experiences like sleep paralysis. Though there is evidence and testimonies of abductees to suggest that alien abduction is very real and has been happening for thousands of years. The term alien abduction refers to the phenomenon of people reporting the experience of being kidnapped by an unusual figure and subjected to physical experimentation. While the term alien abduction did not achieve widespread attention until the 1960s, modern speculation about some older stories interpreted them as possible cases, such as in 1896 when Colonel H.G. Shaw claimed he and a friend were harassed by three tall, slender humanoids whose bodies were covered with a fine, downy hair, who tried to kidnap the pair. An early alien abduction claim occurred in the mid-1950s with the Brazilian Antonio Villas-Boas case, which did not receive much attention until several years later. On the 16th of October 1957, 23-year-old Antonio Villas-Boas was working at night to avoid the hot temperatures of the day. As he was ploughing the fields near São Francisco de Sales, he saw what he described as a red star in the night sky. According to his story, this star approached his position, growing in size until it became recognisable as a roughly circular or egg-shaped aerial craft, with a red light at its front and a rotating cupola at the top. The craft began descending to land in the field, extending 3 legs as it did so. At that point, Boas decided to run from the scene. According to Boas, he first attempted to leave the scene on his tractor, but when its lights and engine died after travelling only a short distance, he decided to continue on foot. However, he was seized by a 5-foot-tall humanoid who was wearing grey overalls and a helmet. Its eyes were small and blue, and instead of speech, it made noises like barks or yelps. 3 similar beings then joined the first in subduing Boas, and they dragged him inside their craft, where he was subjected to experimentation before finally being escorted off the spacecraft. Widespread publicity of alien abduction was generated by the Betty and Barney Hill abduction case of 1961. On the 19th of September 1961, the Hills were driving back to Portsmouth from a vacation in Niagara Falls and Montreal. Just south of Lancaster, New Hampshire, Betty claimed to have observed a bright point of light in the sky that moved from below the Moon and the planet Jupiter. While Barney navigated US Route 3, Betty reasoned that she was observing a falling star, only it moved upwards. Because it moved erratically and grew bigger and brighter, Betty urged Barney to stop the car for a closer look. Barney stopped at a scenic picnic area just south of Twin Mountain. Betty, looking through binoculars, observed an odd-shaped craft flashing multicoloured lights travelling across the face of the Moon. Because her sister had several years earlier said she had seen a flying saucer, Betty thought it might be what she was observing. Through binoculars, Barney observed what he reasoned was a commercial airliner. However, he soon changed his mind, because without looking as if it had turned, the craft rapidly descended in his direction. The Hills said they continued driving on the isolated road, moving very slowly through Franconia Notch in order to observe the object as it came closer. About 1 mile south of Indian Head, they said, the object rapidly descended towards their vehicle, causing Barney to stop in the middle of the highway. The huge, silent craft hovered about 80 to 100 feet above the Hills' car and filled the entire field of view in the windshield. Getting out of his car and using the binoculars, Barney claimed to have seen 8 to 11 humanoid figures who were peering out of the craft's windows, seemingly to look at him. Barney tore the binoculars away from his eyes and ran back to his car. In a near hysterical state, he told Betty, "They're going to capture us." Fleeing back to the car and speeding away, the Hills tried to outrun the spacecraft, but it hovered over them and released a buzzing sound which altered the Hills' state and forced Barney to stop the car. What happened after was pieced together after the couple sought help for their unexplained missing time on their journey. Both revealed that they had been taken on board the spacecraft and subjected to a number of tests, Betty recounting of a long needle which was placed up her nasal.
And the examiner has a long needle in his hand, and I see the needle, and it's bigger than any needle I've ever seen. And I asked him what he's going to do with it, and he said just a simple test to won't hurt me. And I asked him what, and he said he just wants to put it in my navel. It's just a simple test. And I told him, no, it will hurt. Don't do it. Don't do it. And he said, no, it won't hurt. And he sticks a needle into my navel. And
After the landmark cases of Antonio Villas-Boas and the Hills, more abduction cases would emerge. Bud Hopkins had been interested in UFOs for some years, and in the 1970s he became interested in abduction reports and began using hypnosis to extract more details of dimly remembered events. Hopkins soon became a figurehead of the growing abductee subculture. The 1980s brought a major degree of mainstream attention to the subject. Works by Hopkins, novelist Whitley Strieber, historian David N. Jacobs and psychiatrist John E. Mack presented alien abduction as a plausible experience. With Hopkins, Jacobs and Mack, accounts of alien abduction became a prominent aspect of ufology. There have been earlier abduction reports, but they were believed to be few and far between and saw rather little attention from ufology and even less attention from mainstream professionals or academics. Jacobs and Hopkins argued that alien abduction was far more common than earlier suspected. They estimate that tens of thousands or more North Americans had been taken by unexplained beings. It is recognised that most alien abduction reports follow 7 points. Capture. The abductee is somehow rendered incapable of resisting and taken to an apparent alien spacecraft. Examination and procedures. Evasive, physiological and psychological procedures, and, on occasion, simulated behavioural situations, training and testing, or sexual liaisons. Conference. The abductors communicate with the abductee or direct them to interact with specific individuals for some purpose, typically telepathically, but sometimes using the abductee's native language. Tour. The abductees are given a tour of the captor's vessel, though this is disputed by some researchers who consider this definition of confabulation of intent when just apparently being taken around to multiple places inside the ship. Loss of time. Abductees often rapidly forget the majority of their experience, either as a result of fear, medical intervention, or both. Return. The abductees are returned to Earth, occasionally in a different location from where they were allegedly taken, or with new injuries or disheveled clothing. Theophany. Coinciding with their immediate return, abductees may have a profound sense of love, a high similar to those induced by certain drugs, or a mystical experience accompanied by a feeling of oneness with God, the universe, or their abductors. And finally, aftermath. The abductees must cope with the psychological, physical, and social effects of the experience. Mainstream scientists reject claims that the phenomenon literally occurs as reported. However, there is little doubt that many apparently stable persons who report alien abductions believe their experiences were real, though it is associated that while psychopathology was associated with some cases, most reports were from sane, common people. Some abduction reports are extremely detailed, and an entire subculture has developed around the subject, with support groups and detailed mythos explaining the reasons for abductions. Various aliens have been reported, such as greys, insectoids and reptilians. Each are said to have specific roles, origins and motivations. Abduction claimants do not always attempt to explain the phenomenon, but some take independent research interest in it themselves and explain the lack of greater awareness of alien abduction as the result of either extraterrestrial or governmental interest in cover-up. Skeptics have argued that if actual flesh and blood aliens were abducting humans, there should be some hard evidence that this is occurring, as some studies suggest that in some alien encounters, this phenomena would be related to dissociative REM sleep states, like lucid dreams, sleep paralysis, and out-of-body experiences. In a 2021 study published in the International Journal of Dreams Research, researchers focus on the hypothesis that if some of alien abduction stories are the products of REM sleep, then they could be deliberately emulated by lucid dreaming practitioners. To check the hypothesis, they instructed a group of volunteers to try to emulate alien encounters via lucid dreams. Of the volunteers, 114, 75%, were able to experience alien encounters. Skeptics have also pointed out that UFO abduction claims have declined since their initial surge in the mid-1970s, and alien abduction narratives have found less popularity in mainstream media. Skeptic Michael Shermer proposed that the ubiquity of camera phones increases the burden of evidence for such claims and may be the cause for their decline. Many still report being taken by aliens, and it is not difficult to find their stories. Believers also point to ancient stories of abduction which follow the accepted outline of being taken, but ultimately it is for you to decide. Do you believe?